Hey, what's up? Ken from Palm Beach Dyno here. Behind me is our 2020 GT500 featuring a 3.8 liter Whipple supercharger. If you guys missed our last video on this vehicle, you can check it out here. We ran the car on a 3.75 pulley and a 3.5 pulley, showed you those dyno numbers. Then we put a 3.25 on it, headed to the track. We didn't have time to dyno it. We're gonna do that today. We're also gonna step down to a 3.0 pulley, which is crazy boost for a stock engine, but we're gonna see what it'll do. But that's not it. We also have Austin Rodriguez with his 2018 Mustang GT 10-speed car with a stock short block with a 3.8. We ran that car recently. We'll show you that and compare it. We'll show you Terry Day's car, which is a 2019 10-speed car with a 3.8 liter at high boost. We'll compare those all, tell you what boost they made on different combos, how compression ratio affects that. If you like these videos, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps a lot. Like this video, and let's see what it'll make on a 3.25 pulley.
Spitting.
Was that?
Yeah.
Definitely spinning on the dyno. Not anymore. Holy cow, dude. That is badass. I don't know if I'm gonna put the other pulley on now. Probably do one more pull all the way up. All right, let's go over the dyno numbers. For reference, here's where we left off last time, 1081, 731. So what happened was, on that very first pull, we spun very badly. And I'll show you how to analyze that on the dyno, actually, so you guys know, for those of you that have dynos that don't know, or just in general. But you can see here, the blue was below the red, and then eventually the tires started to grip, and we made 1142. But we'll go over the boost in a second. Let me show you how we know it's spun. If you map gear ratio by itself versus RPM. Gear ratio is RPM divided by mile per hour. So in general, it should be a flat line. It's never gonna be perfectly flat. You have tire deformation, tires heating up, things like that. You might have some slip in your clutch, which would show here, or your torque converter, if it's unlocked, will show here. Obviously with the DCT, we didn't have that issue. I wasn't getting any clutch slip. But as you can see here, you have a big, huge, change here in the gear ratio, and that's exactly where it lost power. And we can show you that that is definitely true because we did another pull after strapping the car down a little better. So what we did was we retied the car down. The tires were warm. The Cup 2s don't stick very well when they're cold on the street or on the dyno. And we put down 1187 and 802 on the torque. Now this is just under 100 horsepower with 3 PSI, which is amazing, but somewhat expected on a large blower like this because we're just now getting into the efficiency range. Realistically, I probably could have tweaked this a little bit more, maybe hit 1200, but we want to go ahead and get that 3.0 pulley on it. So we're going to get that switched over and see what it makes. And this is as high as we're going to go. Now the blower will make much more boost. Again, we don't even have a lower pulley on this thing. This is a stock lower. We're waiting on the 20% lower from Whipple to go any higher due to belt slip and, again, stock engine. Can you tell I'm nervous? Anyway, let's see what the 3.0 does. Like it's nothing. Not like, I can't believe how smooth this is going. Fueling's perfect, everything's perfect on it. Woo! Man. All right, here's our best pull on a 3.5 pulley and the 3.25 pulley. Now, here we go with the 3.0 pulley. This is the very first pull, 1247 and 863. You look at the boost here, it saw a peak of 26 pounds, but again, we're gonna check it at like 7,500 to get a more sane idea of where we're at. 18, 21, and that one was 25, which is about what we were expecting. You go all the way down to 6,500 RPM, and we're only making 23 pounds of boost, to give you some idea of the boost curve on this thing. So after that, we went ahead and made another pull after some changes, mostly to higher RPM, and we made 1261, and then our best pull was 1268 and 867. So let me get rid of the other ones real quick, and we'll look at the 3 different pulleys we have mapped out here. All right, there we go. So first we'll go over the boost curves. As you can see, very, very consistent. This is very encouraging actually, because this is only the 8-rib setup, and all the way down to a 3.0 pulley, it seems to be holding fairly well. You can't really argue with that. The 10-rib is definitely gonna be recommended for anybody with a built motor or wants 100% no belt slip. But in this case, we're doing pretty good. Now, we'll go ahead and get rid of the torque so we can take a better look at the horsepower curves. As you can see there, I mean, it does exactly what the boost does. Everything's nice and smooth. I feel like we really have this tune already dialed in awesomely, especially with this throttle body. So, now, where do we go from here? Well, we already have an engine being built by TKM, a new engine, so that way we were able to continue with this development while that engine's being built. I hear that will be done in a few weeks. So we hope to have that engine in for FL2K. If not, it will be in for Mod Nats. We'll have the Whipple, we'll have a lower pulley, and we're really gonna send this thing. Now the question a lot of the GT500 guys have is on the transmission and the clutch and things like that. Quite honestly, we do not know. I did figure out some more things on the stock clutch that I think is gonna make it hold better. It seemed to be that way last time at the track, and we're gonna really find out when we try and run this 1268, which is gonna be very soon. Anyway, I wanna talk about Austin Rodriguez's 3.8 liter stock engine car. That stock short block. That car has ported heads by Head Games, and it also has some comp cams in it. It used to have a Cobra Jet setup, was super fast on the street. He decided to go the 3.8 route, and it went very, very well. First, let's go ahead and watch the dyno pulls, and then we'll go over the results. These were the top two numbers that he made. The last one was 989 and 699. These are SAE numbers. The pull earlier than that was 954 and 697. What I'm gonna do is we're gonna analyze the 954 numbers actually, even though the 989 was higher, because we didn't get a great RPM trace on the 989, and if I map it versus RPM, it's not gonna map out correctly. But what you can see here is it was mostly the same, and then we just cleared up the tune up top just a little bit. So let me go ahead and get rid of the red one. And then we're gonna change it to RPM. All right, so first off, let's just address how much boost this thing made. 16.35 peak, and that's with 3.875 pulley on the top. The GT500 and the Mustang GT both have the same size balancer. So we can compare the top pulleys, or you would think you could. But first off, let's look down in the mid-range here like we were doing on the GT500. At 7,500 RPM, it's only making 16 pounds. And at 7,000, it's under 16 pounds, okay? So how does this compare to a GT500? Well, what's the big difference between this vehicle and the GT500? The compression ratio. Austin's car stock is 12:1, and then of course his heads reported, probably raising the compression a little bit more. So as you can see, his graph is blue, and for the most part, he beat me almost through the entire RPM range except at the top. But remember, we had cleaned up his car up top, so his graph would be almost identical to this up top, beating me down low with a larger pulley on the blower and making more boost. See here, you can see he was making at 5,500, he's making 15.5 pounds, I'm making 13.5 pounds. Now, there's multiple things going on here. One of them might be related to porting the Supercharger, which mine is ported and Austin's is not. Some people ask that on the GT500, and this is how it's going to act. So some of this might be the porting of the Supercharger, but the big power difference and overall more boost is a factor of the high compression ratio. So this is where this becomes an advantage. It's an advantage right now on a GT500 because as the compression ratio is lower, you can run higher pump gas numbers, which we're gonna be showing you on the GT500 a lot coming up soon. And it's safer, right? There's a bigger window to make errors on the tuning, or if something happens with the car, it's less likely to have an issue, especially with boost at lower compression, but you do get the power out of the higher compression setups. So, he's roughly at 1,000 horsepower on the stock engine. Is this safe? We've done that quite a bit on Mustang GTs, but this is the largest pulley he can run, and we're gonna leave it at that until he gets to the track. And he might step up just a little bit more and see how far we can go. Considering it has camshafts and heads, that helps the engine flow a little bit better, so we can make more power at lower boost, which is beneficial. Next up, we're gonna compare Terry Day's numbers to this. He has a 2019 Mustang GT, but it has a built motor, fully set up. His ultimate goal is a 7-second 10-speed car, and we recently had that on the dyno, so go ahead and check that out, and we'll show you the difference on the graph. Here's Terry Day's Beast. That unit features a 3.5 upper pulley, but he has the 20% lower. So this gives you an example of stock short block versus a fully built setup at high boost. Unfortunately, our boost sensor was broken this day, but based on his numbers and everything, I'm guessing this is in like the 25-pound range, somewhere around there. Because we'll go ahead and compare it to my car in just a second. But as you can see, the power curve is almost identical, and the real difference here is boost. You're talking probably about 9 pounds of boost, and the difference is just short of 270 horsepower. So you do the math. That's pretty good. Now, let's go ahead and get rid of Austin's numbers. And this is versus my GT500. 1268 to 1270, pretty damn close. Both peaked very high. His peaked at 8,400 roughly. I'm at 8,500. Again, don't forget, his is an automatic. Mine is a DCT, which is gonna dyno more like a stick car. He definitely beat me on torque. Again, this is a higher compression setup, so we will expect that somewhat. Really, he beat me everywhere if you look at it. Pretty much right at 7,800, they're even. His car rolls over just a little bit and mine continues to take off. Now, when we're tuning these vehicles at these high RPMs and high power levels, we don't want to do a million pulls, although I did quite a few pulls on mine. So, you know, this sort of stuff may actually change because we tune these cars at the track. Any of these cars that are really fast, all final tuning happens at the track, which we can do for you remotely with trackside support. We'll be doing a whole video on that real soon. One other thing I wanted to go over was some people had questions about the GT500. We already went over the limits of the stock short block. We don't really know, but we're definitely getting to that point of we have no idea if anything may go wrong. So we're ready in case. All right, I also wanted to go over some viewer questions. One big topic is comparing the Whipple for the GT500 versus the stock blower. And I believe there's pros and cons to both. For a big power guy, there's a tipping point. And I think that tipping point is right at that 1,100 horsepower mark, depending on your wants and needs and how much you want to actually modify your vehicle. The advantages to the stock blower is less needs to be changed. If at some point you decided to put the car back to stock and sell it, it would be very simple, and it also maintains a very stock appearance. With our billet lid, it just turns the volume up a little bit, but it still looks mostly stock, and a lot of people like that path. Whereas the Whipple, you have to lower the engine, change a bunch of hoses. Now, could you go back to stock? Of course. It's just gonna be a little bit more work, and you're certainly not gonna be as much of a sleeper as you would be with the stock blower. The stock blower, if somebody doesn't know these cars really, really well, they may think your car's stock, whereas the Whipple, of course, they expect big power out of it. Now, let's talk about the one performance feature that is super important to consider, and that's cooling. The Whipple is the way to go for the real high power, not only because it can make more than the stock blower is capable of, but it's the cooling. That's the magic, and of course, we should know that because Whipple has their intercooler patented. It's so badass. As an example, with our CX1100 package in really bad weather, if you have everything in line, the heat exchanger functioning and all that, and an ice tank, you're still gonna see upwards of 160 to 170 degree air temps. Now, if you were to bypass the heat exchanger to speed the water up a little bit more because the heat exchanger at that point is not needed and it's a restriction, it's actually warming the air up, right? If it's hot out and you're running ice water through it, you're warming that water up. But for convenience factors, sometimes we run it that way. So with the heat exchanger in play, you're at 170, say. Without it, you're at 130. The Whipple, the other night when we ran it on the 325 pulley and it went 157 mile an hour multiple times, we ran it with the heat exchanger in play, but with ice, and we saw 102 degrees, right? So compare that. The best I ever saw with the heat exchanger in play was maybe 150. So you're talking an easy 50 degrees difference. At that point, the car was on similar power levels, but I suspect I can run this vehicle at 1268 and still have zero issues with cooling. In fact, we're gonna go ahead and try and run the car without the ice tank to see what happens there. So the advantages to the Whipple are the cooling and just higher max power. Here's the example of the best we have so far. The blue line is my car that made 1140, which you saw on our channel. But honestly, 1140 is not very realistic. That takes a brand new belt, a brand new pulley. You know, that's like a glory hit, okay? The 1104 pull here in green, that's a little bit more realistic as to a very repeatable number out of the stock blower, okay? So this is the stock blower turned all the way up, which is roughly 23 to 24 pounds, and the Whipple at 25 pounds. So it's already a huge difference. You're talking 164 horsepower peak, and even through the mid-range, you're still talking 70 horsepower, and this is at similar boost. And now we can go much higher with the Whipple, and that's gonna actually be our next serialized package. Once our built engine goes in, we're gonna get that program 100% sorted out with the built engine, make sure the training functions properly for you guys. And once that's successful, that will probably be the new CX 1400R, depending on how much power we make, but that's my guess is what we're gonna release this package at. So next up with this car, we're gonna be headed to the track and go for that easy 8-second pass with the 3.0, but first we're gonna run the 3.25 because I think I can get into 8s on that one. And then we're headed to FL2K, so make sure you check us out there. I hope you like the channel. Please subscribe to it, like the video, share it with your friends, and we'll see you on the next one.